There's a sentence running in the back of your mind right now. You didn't choose it. You inherited it. And it's been quietly deciding the size of your life since before you could spell your own name. Everything you've been told about manifestation is the exact opposite of what your brain actually does. The vision boards, the affirmations whispered to the ceiling, the idea that the universe is out there somewhere, keeping a ledger, waiting to reward you if you just want it badly enough. None of that is how this works. And the people selling it that way have never opened a human skull and watched a thought become a physical structure. I have spent a long time around the machinery of the mind, and here's what I can tell you with certainty. You are manifesting right now, this second. You've been doing it your entire life. The problem isn't that the mechanism is broken. The problem is that nobody told you it was already running. And that, until now, it's been running against you. Let me show you what I mean. Most people think their circumstances created their beliefs. You struggled, so you believe life is struggle. You were overlooked, so you believe you're forgettable. It feels like cause and effect. It feels like honesty. But the brain doesn't work in that direction. Your beliefs came first, and then your brain, which processes somewhere between 6 and 10 million bits of sensory information every second while letting only about 50 of them into conscious awareness, went hunting through reality for evidence that you were right. It found it. It always finds it. That's not wisdom. That's a filter. Sit with that for a moment. The world you're experiencing isn't the world. It's a heavily edited highlight reel, curated by a part of your brain you've never consciously met, working from instructions you never approved. So here's what I'm going to give you over the course of this conversation. 3 things. Keep track of them, because each one closes a door that's been left open in your mind for years. First, I'm going to show you the exact neural mechanism that turns a repeated thought into a permanent expectation. Not a metaphor. The actual wiring. Once you see it, you'll never again confuse a feeling with a fact. Second, I'm going to expose the single most common mistake people make when they try to change their lives. It's so universal that self-help books are built on it. And it's the reason most people who try to think positive end up more stuck than when they started. Third, and this is the one that changes everything, I'm going to hand you the blueprint. The re-engineering protocol. The thing a 12-year-old boy was taught by a stranger in a small shop decades ago that took him from public assistance and a chaotic, violent home to operating on the human brain for a living. Not because of magic, because of method. But before any of that, you need to understand one uncomfortable truth. The reason you haven't gotten what you want isn't that you haven't wanted it enough. Some of you have wanted it so badly it's kept you up at night for years. The wanting was never the problem. The problem is that there's a difference between what you want and what your nervous system is organized to expect. And when those two things disagree, expectation wins every single time. Quietly, invisibly, without ever telling you it's happening. You can spend a decade chasing a goal your own subconscious has already decided you don't deserve. And you'll call it bad luck. You'll call it timing. You'll call it the economy, or your background, or the people who didn't believe in you. It isn't any of those things. Stay with me, because what happens in the next part is where this stops being abstract. I'm going to take you inside your own skull and show you the precise moment a thought stops being something you have and becomes something you are. Here's where most explanations of the mind go wrong. They start with the thought, as if the thought is the beginning. It isn't. By the time you notice a thought, the real work already happened underneath, in the dark, where you have no access. Let me show you what's actually going on in there. Every time you repeat a thought, something physical occurs. 2 neurons that fire in the same instant form a connection, a bridge of proteins and electrical readiness between them. Fire them together again. The bridge thickens. Again, thicker still. This is not poetry. You can photograph it. A thought you've had 10,000 times isn't a thought anymore. It's a road, a 6-lane highway your mind takes automatically because it's the path of least resistance, the route already paved. Now ask yourself a simple question. What road have you driven the most? For most people, the answer is uncomfortable. The most repeated thought in the average human mind is some version of, I'm not enough money, not enough discipline, not far enough along. And every time that sentence runs, you're not just feeling bad. You're laying down asphalt. You're widening the road. You are, with industrial efficiency, manufacturing the exact neural structure that makes the next "I'm not enough" arrive faster and feel truer. This is the observable phenomenon. Forget the why for a moment. Just look at what's happening on the surface. People believe their negativity reflects reality. It doesn't. Their negativity is reflecting their architecture. They built it, brick by brick, thought by thought. And then they look at the wall and call it the world. Stop and consider how strange that is. You would never let a stranger move into your house and rearrange your furniture every night. Yet you let a sentence you didn't write, handed to you by a frightened, exhausted version of yourself who existed decades ago, redecorate your entire perception of reality every single day without protest. There's a part of your brain making this worse, and you should know its name, because you're going to take it back. It's called the default mode network. It switches on the moment your attention isn't occupied, in the shower, in traffic, in the silence before sleep. It's the home of the wandering mind, and critically, it is self-referential. It runs the story of who you are. For a person with a healthy narrative, this network is a gift. It rehearses, plans, imagines, connects. But for someone carrying an old story of inadequacy, the default mode network becomes a torture device that never clocks out. It loops, it ruminates. It returns again and again to the same wound, polishing it, keeping it sharp. You don't choose to think, I always ruin this. It arrives on its own because the road is paved and the network drives it on autopilot the second you stop steering. Here's the part nobody tells you. This same network, the one currently working against you, is the exact equipment you'll use to rebuild. It doesn't care what story it runs. It has no preference for your suffering. It is a machine running whatever script has been installed most often. And scripts can be rewritten, not erased, rewritten, paved over with a new road, driven so many times it becomes the new default. But to do that, you have to understand something deeper than the wiring. You have to understand the chemistry that decides which roads get built, and why some thoughts carve themselves into you in a single afternoon, while others you repeat 1,000 times and they never take hold. Because not all repetition is equal. There's a hidden ingredient that determines whether a thought becomes permanent or evaporates. Most people have never heard of it, and it's the reason your worst beliefs stuck like cement while your good intentions washed away by February. That ingredient is where we go next. And once you know it, you'll understand why willpower has been failing you your entire life, and what actually works instead. You think you have a discipline problem. You don't. You have an installation problem. And the difference between those two is the difference between fighting yourself forever and finally working with the grain of your own mind. Let me take you down one more level, to the chemical that decides what becomes permanent. So, why do some thoughts cement themselves into you overnight, while others slide off no matter how hard you try? The answer is a single word: salience. Your brain does not record your life evenly. It can't. There's too much. So it makes a brutal decision every waking second. What matters and what gets thrown away? The thing it tags as important gets burned in deep. Everything else dissolves, and the chemical that does the tagging, that decides what's worth keeping, is the same one most people completely misunderstand: dopamine. You've been told dopamine is the pleasure chemical, the reward you feel when something good happens. That's wrong, and the mistake matters. Dopamine isn't about pleasure. It's about importance. It's the highlighter. When dopamine floods a moment, your brain leans in and says, "Remember this. This is significant. Build a road here." It's not marking what felt good. It's marking what felt charged. And here is the cruelty most people never grasp. Fear releases dopamine. Shame releases it. The sharp, sick moment of humiliation lights up the salience network like a flare, which means the most emotionally violent moments of your childhood, the ones you'd give anything to forget, were tagged by your own biology as the most important data you ever collected. Carved in. Highlighted in permanent ink. Your brain didn't preserve them to hurt you. It preserved them because, in that moment, they screamed, "This matters for your survival." Let that land. The reason "I'm not enough" feels more true than any compliment you've ever received is not because it is more true. It's because it was installed with more chemical force. A single afternoon of humiliation can outweigh 1,000 gentle reassurances, not because the universe is unfair, but because terror writes in bold and kindness writes in pencil. This is the mechanism underneath everything. The salience network, soaked in dopamine, deciding what's real. And once you understand it, a door opens that most people walk past their entire lives. Because if salience is what makes a thought permanent, if emotional charge is the ink, then the question stops being, "How do I think positive?" That's the amateur's question, and it fails every time. The real question is, how do I attach enough genuine emotional charge to a new belief that my brain tags it as important enough to keep? That's the whole game. Not repetition alone. Charged repetition. Repetition your nervous system actually believes. And this is exactly where the next piece of the machine comes in. Because your brain has a structure whose entire job is to chase down whatever you've tagged as important and hunt for it in the world. Neuroscientists call it the salience and attention system working together, but you can think of it as a bloodhound. You tag something as mattering. The bloodhound gets the scent, and then it starts dragging evidence of that thing into your awareness from a world it was previously ignoring. This is why, the moment you decide to buy a certain car, you suddenly see it on every street. The cars were always there. Your bloodhound just got a new assignment. Now apply that to your beliefs. You tagged "I always fail" as deeply important decades ago. Your bloodhound has been on that scent ever since, pulling every failure, every slight, every closed door into sharp focus, while quietly discarding the evidence that contradicts it. You haven't been living in reality. You've been living inside a search result, which means the work ahead isn't to fight your brain. It's to give the bloodhound a new scent. But before you can do that, you have to confront the single mistake that sabotages almost everyone who tries. It's the reason affirmations feel hollow. It's the reason vision boards gather dust. And it's so deeply wired into how we're taught to chase what we want that you are almost certainly making it right now, today. Without the faintest idea, it's quietly canceling everything you're trying to build. Sit with the weight of that for a second. Every belief you call a fact about yourself is really just a scent your bloodhound was handed before you were old enough to refuse it. The dog never questioned the order. It just ran. For decades, faithfully bringing you proof of a story you never chose. That's the trap. And the next part is where we name it. Here is the mistake. And I want you to feel the full weight of it, because it has quietly wasted more human potential than laziness ever has. The mistake is this. You've been trying to manifest from fear. Almost everyone does. You sit down to picture the life you want, and underneath the picture is a low humming dread, a fear of staying where you are. You want the money because you're terrified of being broke. You want the relationship because you're terrified of being alone. You want the success because, underneath it all, you're trying to finally prove that you're not the failure you secretly suspect you are. And you think that fear is fuel. You've been told it is. Use the pain. Let it drive you. It's a lie. And it's a lie written into your biology. Here's why. Your nervous system has two fundamental modes, and they cannot run at full strength at the same time. The first is the sympathetic state. Fight, flight, freeze. The survival engine. When it's running, your body is flooded with stress chemistry, your vision narrows, your higher brain functions dim, and your entire system reorganizes around one question. How do I get through the next 60 seconds? It is brilliant for escaping a threat. It is catastrophic for building a life. The second is the parasympathetic state. Calm, open, connected. This is the mode where your prefrontal cortex, the part of you that plans, imagines, and sees possibility, comes fully online. This is the mode you evolved to live in, not the other one. Now here's the trap, and it's exquisite in its cruelty. When you manifest from fear, you flood your system with stress chemistry while trying to picture your dream. And your brain, your literal physical brain, tags that dream with the emotional signature of threat. You are, without knowing it, filing the thing you want in the same drawer as the thing you're afraid of. You're handing your bloodhound a scent soaked in dread. So what does the bloodhound do? It hunts, faithfully. And it brings back every reason the dream is dangerous, impossible, out of reach. You wanted to attract the goal. Instead, you trained your attention to scan for everything standing between you and it. You didn't manifest the dream. You manifested the obstacles. Stop and look at your own life through this lens for a moment. How many times have you wanted something so badly that the wanting itself became unbearable, and the thing never came? You called that wanting commitment. It wasn't. It was your nervous system stuck in threat, broadcasting a single message to every system in your body. This is not safe. This is not safe. This is not safe. You cannot build a calm future from a panicked present. The architect and the man running from a fire are not the same man, and they never will be. This is the great error underneath nearly every self-help failure on earth. People work on the content of their thoughts, words, affirmations, goals, while completely ignoring the state the thoughts are being thought in. They polish the message and never check the frequency it's being broadcast on. And a beautiful message sent in a state of terror arrives as terror. Every time. Think about what this means for the affirmations you whispered into the mirror. You said, "I am wealthy," while your body screamed that you were not. Your nervous system didn't hear the words. It heard the panic underneath them. And it tagged wealth as a source of fear. You were trying to install hope and accidentally installed dread. This is why willpower fails. This is why positive thinking curdles. Not because the idea is wrong, because the state was wrong and the state always wins. So the real work isn't louder affirmations. It isn't wanting harder. It's something almost no one teaches because it can't be sold in a weekend seminar. You have to change the state first. You have to get out of survival before you ever try to build. And what that costs you, what staying in fear has already cost you, silently, for years, is something I need to show you up close. Because until you feel the true price of this error, you won't have the will to leave it behind. And the cost is never a single dramatic loss. That would be easier. It's smaller than that, and worse. It's 1,000 quiet subtractions, spread across years, until one day you look up and wonder where your life actually went. Let me introduce you to someone who knows exactly where it goes. There's a 49-year-old man in a suburb outside Cincinnati who, on paper, did everything right. He's a regional operations director. Good title. He earns more than his father ever dreamed of. There's a colonial house with a 2-car garage, a lawn he keeps immaculate because the neatness of it quiets something in him he can't name. 2 kids, nearly grown now. A wife, who, somewhere in the last decade, stopped expecting him to be present and simply started managing around the space where he used to be. From the outside, a life. From the inside, a held breath that never quite releases. He grew up watching his own father get passed over. Watched a good man come home smaller every year, swallowing things, until the swallowing became who he was. And somewhere in that house, a boy made a quiet vow he was far too young to understand. I will never be powerless like that. I will be so secure, so prepared, so far ahead of the threat that nothing can touch me. He thought it was ambition. It was fear wearing ambition's clothes. So he built. And here's the thing. It worked, in the way that traps always work just enough to keep you in them. Every promotion bought a few months of relief before the dread crept back. Every raise raised the floor he was terrified of falling through. He wasn't climbing toward something. He was running from something. And a man running never arrives. He only finds new ground to keep running across. Watch what fear does to a life this carefully. He's at his daughter's recital, and he's there, physically, third row. But his nervous system is in a meeting that hasn't happened yet, rehearsing a conflict with a colleague, scanning for the threat. His daughter finds his face in the crowd the way kids do. He smiles on cue. He misses it anyway. He's a man watching his own life through a window from the next room over. He can't sleep. 3 a.m., the ceiling, the mind running its oldest road. Not enough, not safe, not yet, not enough. He's exhausted in a way no weekend fixes, because it isn't his body that's tired. It's the part of him that has been standing guard, without relief, for 37 years. And the cruelest part, the part that should stop you cold, is that by every external measure, he succeeded. He got the things. The vow was kept. He is not his father. And it changed nothing, because the threat was never out there in the world where the money could reach it. The threat was a feeling installed in a frightened boy, and you cannot buy your way out of a feeling. You can only outrun it until your legs give out. His do, eventually. They always do. It isn't dramatic. There's no breakdown, no scene. Just a Tuesday evening, standing in his perfect kitchen, holding a glass of water he doesn't remember pouring, and a thought arriving with terrible quietness. I did everything they told me. I have everything I was supposed to want. And I cannot remember the last time I felt safe in my own chest. He's 49. He has perhaps stored up, if he's lucky, another 40 years. And he is standing in the wreckage of a question he never thought to ask. What was all of it for, if the entire time the engine running underneath it was the very thing I was trying to escape? That's where we'll leave him. In the kitchen, holding the water. At the exact edge of the only question that has ever mattered. The one he was too busy surviving to ask. Because here's what he doesn't know yet, standing there. That moment, the one that feels like the end of something, is the only doorway that has ever existed. Every person who ever rebuilt their life passed through a kitchen just like that one. The collapse of the old engine isn't the tragedy, it's the prerequisite. He just can't see it yet. From inside the fear, it never looks like a door. It looks like the end. Stay with that. Because in a moment, I'm going to show you the cost of staying in that kitchen. The precise, measurable price your body and your years pay for a life run on fear. And then, only then, I'm going to hand you the way out. You may have recognized something of yourself in that kitchen. Most people do. Not the title, maybe, not the house, but the held breath. The guard that never stands down. The strange grief of getting what you chased and feeling nothing soften. If any part of that landed, don't look away from it. That recognition is not a wound. It's the first honest thing your nervous system has told you in years. Let's talk about what that life actually costs. Not in feelings. In currency, you can measure. Start with the body, because the body keeps the most honest ledger you own. When you live in chronic survival mode, the state that man in the kitchen lived in for 37 years, your system is bathed, day after day, in stress chemistry it was only ever designed to release in short bursts. Cortisol that was meant to spike for 90 seconds while you escaped a predator instead drips, low and constant, for decades. And that drip has a price list. It degrades the quality of your sleep, which degrades the repair your brain does at night, which degrades your memory, your mood, your judgment the next day. It suppresses your immune system. It raises your blood pressure. It accelerates, in ways researchers can now measure, the rate at which you physically age. Read that again. Fear does not just steal your peace, it shortens your life. The man in the kitchen wasn't just unhappy. He was, in a real and biological sense, dying faster than he had to. But the body is the smaller bill. Here's the larger one. Fear narrows you. That's its job. In a genuine emergency, narrowing is survival. You don't need peripheral vision when there's a tiger. You need the tiger. But run that same narrowing across an entire life and watch what it costs. The narrowed mind cannot see opportunity. The bloodhound is too busy hunting threats to notice the open door 3 feet to the left. How many chances passed within arm's reach of that man? A connection, an idea, a different path, that he never registered because his attention was locked on the next thing that might go wrong. You don't get a receipt for those. They're invisible. They're the most expensive things you'll ever lose, and you never even see them leave. Sit with that for a second. The cruelest cost of fear isn't what it does to you. It's what it quietly subtracts before you ever knew it was there. Then there's connection. The thing that, it turns out, every long-term study of human well-being keeps circling back to, not money, not achievement, but the quality of our relationships. And fear is the enemy of connection, because connection requires the one thing fear cannot allow, lowering your guard. The man in the kitchen had a wife in the next room and a daughter on a stage, and he could reach neither, because reaching requires safety, and he hadn't felt safe since he was 12 years old. His fear didn't just cost him peace, it cost him the people standing right in front of him. And here is the compounding horror of it, the thing that makes this the most expensive error a human can make. You pass it on. A child raised by a parent locked in survival absorbs that state like a language. They don't inherit your words, they inherit your nervous system, the vigilance, the bracing, the sense that the world is a thing to be defended against. That man's father handed him a fear he spent his whole life trying to outrun, and unless something interrupts it, he hands the very same fear, gift-wrapped in a comfortable house, to his own children. The prison gets passed down through the bloodline, each generation certain they built the walls themselves. This is the true cost, not a bad mood. A shortened life, a narrowed mind, a starved heart, and an inheritance of fear passed to the people you love most. And every day you stay in it, the bill grows. Compound interest, paid in the only currency that doesn't come back. Time you cannot reclaim, and years you spend bracing instead of living. Now. You have felt the weight of the problem long enough. You understand the wiring, you understand the chemistry, you understand the error, and you have seen, up close, what it costs. So here is where everything turns. Everything I've shown you so far has been diagnosis. What comes next is the cure, the actual protocol. The same one taught to a desperate 12-year-old in a small shop. The one that rewires the very machinery we've been mapping. Not theory. A method you can begin tonight. This is the blueprint. Stay with me, because this is the part that changes who you become. Before we cross that line, hold one thing. Everything the fear cost, it took, while convincing you it was protecting you. That's the trick at the center of it. The guard you posted to keep you safe was the thing bleeding you, which means the moment you stop trusting the guard, the bleeding stops. And that is closer than you think. Here is the blueprint. 4 steps. Each one targets a specific piece of the machinery we mapped. Do them in order, because the order is the method. Step 1. Change the state before you touch the content. This is the step everyone skips, and skipping it is why the rest fails. Before you visualize anything, before you affirm a single word, you have to move your nervous system out of survival and into the calm, open state where the higher brain comes online. And the fastest doorway into that state is your breath, the one piece of your autonomic nervous system you can consciously seize. Simple enough to do tonight. Sit. Breathe in slowly through the nose. Hold for 4. Release even more slowly through the mouth. 2 minutes. That extended exhale isn't a relaxation cliché. It's a direct signal to your nervous system that the threat has passed, that it's safe to stand down. You are manually shifting gears from the engine that protects you to the engine that builds. Everything that follows only works from inside this state. Step 2. Give the bloodhound its new scent, through every sense at once. Remember salience. A new belief only takes hold if your brain tags it as important, and importance is built through emotional charge and full sensory engagement. So you don't just think the intention, you write it down by hand. The physical act matters. You read it silently. You read it aloud, so you hear it in your own voice. And then you visualize it, vividly, in detail. But here's the part that separates this from every empty affirmation you've ever tried. You don't picture the goal as a distant object you're chasing. You generate the feeling of already being the person who has it. The calm of it. The quiet certainty in the chest. Because your brain cannot fully distinguish a vividly felt internal experience from a real one. And when you visualize from the felt state of already being there, you tag the new identity with genuine emotional charge. That's the ink. That's what makes it stick. If you've stayed with me this far, through the wiring and the chemistry and the cost, you're not the average viewer. The average person clicked away the moment this asked something of them. You're still here. That tells me you're one of the few who actually intends to change something, not just feel it and forget it. Subscribe, so the next blueprint reaches you. You already know why this matters. Let's keep building. Step 3. Repeat it daily in the calm state until the new road is paved. One session changes nothing. You did not become who you are in a single afternoon, and you will not become someone new in one either. This is the law of the nervous system. What fires together wires together, and what wires together must be fired again and again. Morning and evening. Small and consistent. You're not running a marathon on day 1. You're walking around the block every day until the walk becomes who you are. Repetition in the calm state is what slowly turns a chosen thought into an automatic expectation. That's the whole mechanism. There is no shortcut, and you don't need one. Step 4. Act on what your new attention reveals. Then release the grip. Once the new scent is set, your bloodhound starts working. It begins surfacing opportunities, ideas, openings your old fear-narrowed mind filtered out. This is not magic. They were always there. You're simply finally able to see them. Your only job is to act when they appear, to meet the new perception with movement. And then the hardest part? Hold the outcome loosely. Attachment is just fear in a more sophisticated suit. The most powerful state is wanting something fully while remaining whole, whether or not it arrives. You do the work because it's who you've become, not because you fear who you'll be without it. That's the entire blueprint. Regulate the state. Encode through every sense. Repeat until automatic. Act and release. 4 steps that rewire the machinery running your life. But the blueprint isn't the transformation. The blueprint is just instructions. What actually changes, quietly, when no one's watching, is something I want to show you. Because it doesn't look the way you'd expect. It almost never arrives as a thunderclap. People wait for the dramatic before and after and miss the real thing. Real transformation is quieter, smaller, and the first to notice isn't you. It's the people around you, sensing something shifted before they can name it. There's a 52-year-old woman in Portland who didn't change her life all at once. That's the part worth paying attention to. There was no breakthrough weekend, no moment she'd point to. If you asked her when it happened, she couldn't tell you. It happened the way erosion happens. The way a room gets lighter at dawn, so gradually no single instant is the one where it became bright. She'd spent 30 years as the responsible one, the fixer, the woman who anticipated everyone's needs before they spoke, because somewhere very young she'd learned that being needed was the only safe way to be loved. Her whole nervous system was organized around a single question, running underneath everything. Is everyone okay with me? She called it being caring. It was vigilance. It was the same survival engine, just pointed at people instead of money. She didn't set out to manifest anything grand. She just started, one ordinary morning, sitting at the edge of her bed and breathing. 4 seconds in, a long breath out, 2 minutes before the day could grab her, and then a single written line, read aloud, that had nothing to do with any goal. I am safe even when someone is disappointed in me. That was it. That was the whole intervention. It sounds almost too small to matter. Watch what small does, given time. The first week, nothing. The breathing felt foolish. The sentence felt like a lie she was reading to an empty room. But she'd been told not to expect the thunderclap, to just pave the road and trust the paving. So she kept going, morning after morning. The calm state, the written line, the felt sense of a safety she didn't yet believe. And somewhere around the 3rd month, her sister noticed it first. Said something offhand, in passing. You seem different lately. Less braced. The woman didn't even know what she meant, but the word stayed with her. Braced. She hadn't realized she'd been braced her entire life until someone pointed at the absence of it. The changes were never dramatic. They were almost invisible, which is exactly why they were real. A colleague pushed back on her in a meeting, and the old electric jolt of panic, the scramble to fix it, to smooth it, to win back approval, simply didn't come. She noticed its absence the way you notice a sound stopping. She disagreed, calmly, and the room didn't end. Her body had been certain, for 50 years, that it would. Her daughter called one evening, upset, and for the first time in memory, the woman didn't immediately try to solve it, didn't absorb the distress into her own chest. She just listened, and her daughter, near the end, said something she'd never said before. Thank you for not making this about you. The woman sat with the phone a long time after. She didn't get a windfall. She didn't transform into someone unrecognizable. That's not what happened, and the cynic in you should note it. What happened was subtler and far larger. The question running underneath her life, is everyone okay with me, slowly, quietly, got replaced by a different one. What's actually true here, and what do I want? That's the whole transformation. Not a new life, a new operating system underneath the same life. The house was the same. The woman standing in it was not. She would tell you she didn't manifest a single external thing on any list. What she manifested was the one thing every external thing had only ever been a substitute for. She manifested the felt experience of being safe in her own skin. And from inside that safety, everything she'd been chasing through other people simply stopped being something she had to chase. She's not finished. Nobody is. She still catches the old bracing some mornings, the reflex to manage everyone's comfort. But now she sees it, and seeing it, she gets to choose. That's all freedom ever was. Not the absence of the old road. The ability, finally, to take a different one. Notice what's missing from her story. No magic. No universe rearranging itself. Just a woman, a breath, a sentence, repeated until it became true. The least mystical thing imaginable. And the most powerful. Hold on to her, because what her quiet change reveals about you, about who you are underneath the fear, is where this has been heading, and it's bigger than any goal on any list. And if you felt a flicker reading that, a quiet not yet, but maybe, don't argue with it. That flicker is the part of you the fear never reached. It's been waiting. It's still there. So let's name what actually changed for that woman. It wasn't her circumstances. Her job was the same. Her house was the same. Her history was every bit as real. Nothing in the external world rearranged itself to accommodate her. What changed was the self that met all of it. And this is the part most people never reach, because they're so busy chasing the next thing on the list, they miss the only transformation that was ever available. They think manifestation is about getting. It isn't. At its deepest level, it's about becoming. And what you become is not a person who has more. It's a person no longer ruled by fear. Think about who you've actually been all this time. You are not your thoughts. You proved it the moment I named the voice in your head, and you recognized it as separate from you. Because the thing that can observe a thought cannot be the thought. You are not your fear. The fear is a program, installed young, running on hardware you didn't choose. You are not the story of inadequacy that's been narrating your life. That story had an author, a frightened child doing the best they could with no tools and no help. So who are you then? Underneath all of it. You are the one who can choose which road to pave. That's it. That's the whole of your freedom, and it's enormous. You are not the prisoner. You were never the prisoner. You've been holding the key this entire time, convinced it belonged to someone else. Sit with the size of that. Every limitation you've accepted as a fact about yourself, I'm just anxious, I'm not disciplined, I'm bad with people. I always sabotage the good things. None of those describe who you are. They describe which roads got paved before you knew you had a say. And a road, however deep, is not destiny. It's just the path of least resistance until you build another. When does a thought stop being something you have and become something you are? The moment you forget you're the one thinking it. And the reverse is just as true. The instant you remember, the instant you catch yourself mid-thought and realize there's a you standing behind it, watching, that thought loses its grip. Not because it disappears, because you stopped mistaking it for yourself. This is the integration. The moment knowledge stops being information and becomes identity, you don't just understand you can change your nervous system. You become a person who relates to their own mind differently. You stop being the passenger who's terrorized by whatever thought arrives, and you become the one who notices the thought, recognizes the old road, and quietly chooses whether to drive it. That shift changes everything downstream. A person who knows they are not their fear makes different decisions. They take the risk because failure is no longer a referendum on their worth. They speak honestly because they don't need approval to feel safe. They love openly because they're no longer guarding a self they secretly believe is defective. They become, slowly, the kind of person good things happen to. Not by magic, but because they've stopped sabotaging the good things to confirm an old story. And here's what nobody tells you about that kind of change. It doesn't just free you. It frees the people downstream of you. The child who absorbs your nervous system absorbs a calmer one. The partner who lives beside you gets a person who can actually be reached. You stop transmitting the inheritance of fear and start transmitting something else. The felt experience of safety, of presence, of a person at home in themselves. That is the most valuable thing you'll ever give anyone you love. You can only give it once you have it. This is what manifestation actually was, the whole time, underneath the vision boards and the wanting. Not a technique for acquiring objects. A path back to the self-fear buried. The you that existed before the world taught you to fear it. You came to learn how to get what you want. And maybe you will. But the deeper thing, the thing you actually came for without knowing it, is what I want to leave you with. Because once you understand it, the original question quietly answers itself, and you'll see that everything you've ever chased was only ever pointing here. The question you walked in with, how do I manifest what I want, was never the real question. It was the surface of a deeper one you've asked your whole life without words. And the answer is so close now, you could almost touch it. So here's the question underneath the question. The one you've been asking your whole life without the words for it. It was never really, how do I get what I want? It was, am I safe? Am I enough? Will I ever stop running? Everything on every list you've ever made, the money, the house, the title, the relationship, was only ever a proxy for that. You didn't want the Porsche. You wanted to feel the way you imagined the Porsche would make you feel. Secure, seen, finally allowed to exhale. The object was just the costume the real longing wore so you could keep chasing it without ever having to look at it directly. Think back to the man in the kitchen and the woman at the edge of her bed. They were the same person in a sense. Two people who had spent decades chasing a feeling through the external world, certain the next acquisition or the next bit of approval would finally deliver it. One was still running. One had stopped. And the only difference between them, the entire difference, was not what they had. It was where they were asking the question from fear or from safety, from the locked cell or from the open door. You get to choose which one you are. Not someday. Not when conditions improve. The choice is available in the next breath you take. The slow one. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. The one that tells your oldest survival machinery that the emergency it's been bracing against for 30 years was never actually happening. That breath is the first brick of the new road, and you can lay it the moment this ends. And here is the thing that reframes everything you've heard. You can have that feeling now. Not after the goal. Not when the number in the account is finally big enough. Now. Because the safety you've been chasing through objects was never going to come from objects. It comes from a nervous system that has learned it's allowed to stand down, and a self that has stopped believing the old story about its own worth. That's the secret hiding inside the word manifestation. It was never about bending the world to your will. It was about ending the war inside yourself, so that you could finally meet the world from a place of wholeness instead of lack. And from that wholeness, build something real. And notice what happens when you do. When you build from wholeness instead of lack, the goals don't vanish. They get cleaner. You still want the good work, the security, the love. But you want them now as expressions of who you are, not as evidence you're trying to manufacture to prove you matter. The wanting stops being a wound and becomes a direction. And a person moving in a clear direction, from a calm nervous system, with their attention finally pointed at opportunity instead of threat, that person tends to get remarkably far. Not by magic, by no longer standing in their own way. Let me ask you to do one thing before you go. Just one. There is a person in your life who is exactly where you were at the start of this, locked in the fear, certain the walls are permanent, holding the key in a pocket they've forgotten they have. You know who they are. You thought of their face just now. Send them this. Not as a video, as a key. Send it to 5 people who you know are still in the kitchen, holding the glass of water, asking the wrong question. It costs you nothing, and for one of them, it might be the thing that turns the lock. You were lucky enough to find this. Most people never do. Pass that luck forward. It's the cheapest, most powerful gift you'll give all year. And then, before you leave me one honest sentence in the comments. Not a performance. The truth. What road have you been driving without realizing you paved it yourself? And tell me what you want the next blueprint to be about. I read them. The next one finds its subject in what you say. Now hear the thing I want you to carry out of here. You walked in asking how to manifest anything you want, and the answer turned out to be the strangest reversal of all. You don't manifest the life you want. You become the person who was never afraid of it in the first place. And then the wanting quietly takes care of itself. That's it. That was the whole secret, hiding in plain sight, the entire time. The key was never out there in the universe. It was in your pocket before you ever pressed play. The cell was never locked. Go let yourself out.